Hey guys, how are you doing? This is Zed from Zed Outdoors and I hope you're having an awesome day. So today I am with Nick Westermann of Hewn and Hone. Nick, how are you doing?
Very well, and yourself?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Now if you're unfamiliar with Nick, Nick is a full-time professional toolmaker based here in beautiful rural Wales, and this is where we're filming from. Now what I've done on this visit to see Nick, we're actually filming a series of videos. This video that you're watching is part 3 of a series of videos where Nick is showing his entire process for making a turning Sloyd knife. Now if you haven't seen the previous videos up until now, to see the point that we've gotten to, I would highly recommend you go check those videos out. Links to those will be down below in the description, and subsequently the videos that follow afterwards till we get to a finished knife with a handle, the link to that will also be down below in the description. A few quick housekeeping things before we get on with the meat and bones of this video. As I mentioned already, this video is part of a broader series. All the other videos that I'm filming with Nick as part of the series are down below in the description. Also this video, because it has different components attached to it as we go throughout this section of the knife making video that we're doing, then to kind of accompany that, what we've done is we've broken this video down into different chapters to help facilitate the viewing. So if you scroll along the timeline, you'll be able to see those different sections marked out. All those different sections are also down below in the description. On the left hand side are the corresponding times. Now YouTube has a very cool feature. If you click on that time component, the video will jump straight to that section, saving you having to manually scroll through. Another thing I'll also be doing is various things we're going to reference in this video as part of the making process that Nick actually has available for you to get on the Hewn and Hone website. So everything that we reference throughout this video is going to be linked below in the description. And finally, what I'm going to do is put a link to the Hewn and Hone website and the Instagram profile where you can find out about the plethora of information that we've got going on. So in this particular video, what we're going to be looking at in this process of making a turning Sloyd knife, we're going to be looking at Nick's process for establishing the profile and also grinding the bevel. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. So Nick, would you like to do just a brief summary of how we got up to this stage in terms of the previous videos and what we covered?
Yes, yeah. Well, we started with a round bar of this diameter, and it's been forged out to a bit of a blob shape. Perhaps that's a bit unfair, but like it hasn't been. It was forged out quite quickly, and then it's been cropped to refine the shape a bit more. And then it's actually been heat treated, so all these with an edge on will act as a knife. But the heat treat is done, it's tool steel obviously, and it will cut like a knife. I actually sell them at this stage on the website as a turning Sloyd blank, but I leave the actual shape a lot less defined, so you can decide exactly what shape you make of it. I'm not defining it as tightly as I could do. Whereas what I have done at this point is, because I know I'm going to be making turning Sloyds out of these, when or my version of a turning Sloyd, when I did the cropping, I cropped a lot tighter, so I'm much closer to size, which just makes the grinding easier. There's less to show on the video of the grinding process. So I'm going to be, in this section of video, I'm going to be grinding the profiles on, which just means grinding in this direction. I'm not going to do anything towards the bevels at this point, just grind on the blade that I want to make from this blank.
So to begin that process, where would you like to actually begin?
I'm going to start on my big 3-phase grinder because it's quick, so I'm going to be refining the spine. I'm going to cut the spine to flat this way, and then I'll refine the edge, what's kind of the shape of the edge here, and then I will also, because I like the inside towards the tang here, rather than being a curve, well, rather than the curve it was forged, I like it to be a radius, so I'm going to be cutting in like this here. So that's what I do, and I'll do 2.
So just a couple of questions, if I may, before you begin, is what grit are you going to be working with to do the initial?
This is an old belt, but they last a long time. This is 36 grit, so it's fairly old, but it will still rip this out quite quickly, because this is a 3 or 5, no, it's 5 horsepower machine, so it will rip it out quite quickly. I've got to be careful at this point I don't overheat anything, because these have been hardened and tempered. They were tempered to 190 degrees centigrade, so if I when I'm grinding them, I get the steel to over 190 degrees, I will be tempering further. As long as I stay below 190 degrees, which is pretty hot, you can't hold it at that temperature, I'm not going to do any damage or potential damage to the edge of the blade. So I've got to keep them cool. Normally I'd do a batch of 10 or 20 or whatever, so I'd do a grind, put it down, do a grind, and then by the time I get back to it, it will have cooled off. Because I'm only doing 2, I might have to dip these in water depending on how hot they get. Normally I try and avoid that if I'm doing batches, just by working through them in sequence.
And the final question I've got for you on that is, would I assume then people just use whatever belt grinder they have to hand, basically?
Oh yes, yes. I mean, this is quicker, but yes, the rest of the grinding is going to be done on the Sorby Pro edges, which are they're a third of a horsepower as opposed to 5 horsepower. So like this has got 15 times more power. So which is quicker and makes yeah, but you'll still get there. And as long as you cool the blade down as you grind so you don't overheat it, it doesn't really matter what you do it on, yes.
So just before we actually begin, are there any kind of health and safety things to talk about?
Well, anything which is specific to your grinder, really, because it depends on the grinder. You know, don't stick your hand in the grinder. I mean, there's sort of obvious things about this is a lot more dangerous as a grinder because it's 15 times more powerful. But generally, eye protection is an absolute. Glasses, ear protection, and what's that one? What's that? No wasps? No, just danger, isn't it? Yes. Yeah,
no wasps.
Just danger, no wasps, no one. Yeah, ear protection, which I probably won't do because it's a short one, but ear protection. But on the Sorby, that doesn't produce enough noise to warrant ear protection. It really doesn't. It's not an issue. So
and you have an extractor as well, don't you?
yes, but then dust, yes. So we'll be putting the extractor on here, this extracts from there, and normally I'll be wearing a dust mask despite having extraction, but I won't in the short term because of this. You're unlikely to have dust extraction in your own workshop, so a dust mask or good ventilation. I think it's one of those things that it matters. If you're doing it 10 hours a day, it's much more important if you're just grinding one knife. But even so, be aware of dust. No dust is good, is it? So yes, a mask is a simple precaution. So that's what I would recommend, but won't be doing.
So where would you like to begin then, Nick?
I'll do them both. I'm going to start grinding the spine flat, and I want the spine to come in. At this point, I put my glass on so I can see. See that it jumps up a bit there. It doesn't matter, but I want the spine to be coming in a straight line to the tang. So I'm going to grind that, and then when I've refined that, I'm going to get the edge profile I want, and then I'll come in here and grind on there. But I'll do 2 spines, 2 edges, 2 things. So I'm going to turn it on now, and it'll get horribly noisy.
So Nick, are we moving on to the Pro Sorby now?
The Sorby Pro Edge, yes. Yeah, so the next thing is to just refine these profiles. So I sort of ripped them out on a big machine, and now I'm going to just refine it. There's very little to do really. Most of what I'm going to do is when I sell the turning Sloyds, he doesn't really make any real difference, but aesthetically I really like the spine, rather than being flat or curved this way, I like it to be slightly concave, which just adds tension to the blade. That's how I like to think of it. It just looks a bit more, yes, I like the look of it. So that's what I'm going to do. And because I do a lot of these, I make a lot of these blanks, so I sell them at this point for you to shape yourself, and you can shape any shape you want. But I'm going to be demonstrating how I make one of the turning Sloyds, which is sold on Hewn and Hone. So I will show you how I actually shape that. And because I do a lot of them and I want a concave spine, I've actually made a convex platten which mirrors that. So all I have to do is press it up against here, and that will form the right radius, or the radius I want, which is right for me. So that's what I'm going to do. All of these shapes I'm happy with. I spent quite a lot of time refining the edge, and that's quite good. I like a blade which is pretty flat. I think the ones Dave does has more belly in. I think that they run a bit more belly along the length, whereas I tend to go quite flat, and then the tip dips away and provides straight. If you went flat all the way along, you'd have a very fragile tip. So the angle goes flat, and then it curves in to form the tip. But
and you're referring to Dave Cockcroft?
Yes, sorry, Dave Cockcroft. Yes.
Yeah. And just one question with this: what grit are you working with now? Is it the same grit? Or?
This is a 60 grit. Yes. Which will again rip it out. I've got some 36s, but they don't seem to work so well on the Pro Edge. I think you need perhaps more speed, because that one goes much quicker. But we'll turn this on and get going. I'll turn the extraction on with this because it will extract there. So. They're getting a bit hot.
So is this a different grit?
Yes, this is a 600 grit. So this is just like a finishing grit, just so you don't end up with really coarse scratch marks. Then the last thing I like to do is to polish up around here, just because I think it's quite a nice, you've got a forged finish and a little bit of shiny steel. And that's it. I'll turn the extraction off. So that's the profiling done. I mean, these have ended up a bit longer than my normal turning Sloyds. I should have knocked them back a bit, but it doesn't matter. And that's and I always like to polish up the spine and this section of the tang, because I think that looks quite nice. So yeah, well actually we'll do this next, because it's easier to do, it's much safer to do this at this point rather than once I put the bevel on. So we'll polish that up, which just takes a couple of seconds.
So Nick, what's next in the process?
Well, we've profiled the blades, and the next thing I like to do is to polish up the spine and this area of the tang, which I've taken the scale from. Although I haven't quite hit it there, but we'll do our best. Yeah, and it's just much safer to do that before we put the edge on, so I'll always do this at this stage. So that's what I'm going to do. One thing I should say is that this bench grinder has been modified so it runs away from me. So if you're doing any polishing, it doesn't matter if it runs towards you, but just be aware that you're not, if it was running towards you and you had the tip here, it would dig in, you get a hole digging. So always when you're polishing, even though it hasn't got a sharp edge, it's still got a point, make sure the point is going away from the rotation, not into it, or else you could, nasty things could happen if you're going this way. That wouldn't be good, you'd be coming back like this, but then you couldn't see what you're doing as well. So I've always done it this way. Not saying that's right, that's what I do. I always have the grey coarse compound on this one. This is a mop, which is is it Sisal, I think. It's a bit more aggressive, intrinsically more aggressive, so I'll load grey compound on here, white compound on the felt. This is a cheap eBay felt, which I just use for polishing, and it's you won't get it. Zed will notice this, but this is obviously made from unwashed sheep's wool, so you get a rather pungent aroma when you start polishing. My other high quality felts are a bit better, but it still works all right. But I'll use grey compound to remove the 600 grit scratches, and then white compound to remove the scratches the grey leaves, because the grey is quite coarse for a compound. So I'm going to turn the machine on, load with grey, load with white, and then
just one thing to mention, that these compounds you do make available on Hune and Hone, is that correct?
Yes, these are compounds I sell, and that's why I'm using them, that's why I sell them. Yes, yeah, so this is the coarse compound. There is a blue medium one, which is in the middle of the range, which isn't here but could be, and white is the fine. If you're buying one compound, then the blue does both to some extent, but grey and white is what I tend to use most of the time. So I will switch this on, and this just melts on like a crayon, you'll see. Okay, so now working quite carefully. And you don't want to go straight down, because you make a slit in the, it sort of separates the wheel. If you go at a bit of an angle, it will cut a bit better and press a bit harder. See, I'll polish that up nicely. Now I'll do the other one. That's polished up. And I just like to do it all the way around here, and I've come off the corner of the blade here. And that's it. And then the next stage, do exactly the same with the white compound. Move that out of the way a bit. But I'm just removing scratches, so it should go quite a lot quicker. Can you smell that yet?
I can indeed.
It's not a lot. I mean, I could be happy with the polish from the grey, but I prefer the polish I get from the white. But yeah, it's quite authentic. And that's it. I find it quite reassuring that sheep all over the world smell the same. There we go. So that's the, and I'm not doing anything on here because all this is going to disappear. It'd be pointless polishing this up because that's going to be edge. But that's the polish that you get.
So Nick, are we now going to grind the bevel?
Yes, time to make it into a knife. It'll come quite quickly at this point. So we refined it so we've got the actual profile we want, and now we're going to grind the bevels. Some people would say, oh, you got to freehand or else you're not grinding properly, but grinding accurately very short bevels like this, I don't think is possible to do it to the degree that accuracy that I'm after. And if it was, that it's so slow that so I'm not even going to try and freehand that. A big hollow ground Sloyd is perfectly possible to freehand grind. It might not be as accurate, but it's possible. But for this, no, you need a jig to do the type of grind that I want. And so what I'm going to do is this is what we call a small knife jig, and I can fit the blade in here. So what I'm going to do is, just because it's important that I've got this at exactly 90 degrees, I'm going to take it down here and just use another 2 of these just to make sure I've got it lined up at 90 degrees.
And obviously this is a jig that you sell on Hewn and Hone.
Yes, yep. Yes, this is, yes, yeah. You'd have to do it massively tightly. You can see now the idea of how the jig will work. It will set it up and you can grind both bevels at the same time. The Sorby Pro Edge doesn't have great clearance. You need quite a lot of clearance because you can't get that close to the edge of the belt, so you need to leave a fair bit of blade protruding, which is why this is quite heavy, to stop it being tipped over by the overhang. But check before you do it, you can grind all the way along there. Now, the grind that I have, you could just grind this, again, a lot of this is a Robert Sorby Pro Edge, which has been stretched quite a bit with attachments I've made. So this wraparound table is another Hewn Home product, which is essential for grinding this type of knives. The table, which comes with a machine, tips the other way. So it's great for chisels, but for knives you want to be tipping upwards to make the bevel, whereas that tips the other way. So this is a table which I've designed, and also the platten is an extended platten here, which pushes the belt forwards, so you can actually get the tang up to here, because before the belt would be running level with the edge of the machine, so the tang would be pushing off the belt. So this allows you to get some clearance. So this platten is pretty much essential, or a platten like that. Robert Sorby make a knife jig platten, a knife platten, which will do a similar thing. This has a bit more clearance at the top, which just gives you a bit more space to work with. So at the moment this is set to 90 degrees. If I ground like this, I would just be grinding the blade down, and I could be putting distal taper on the blade so it would taper from the tang to the tip. However, what I want to do is do a primary grind at 4 degrees, which has the effect of thinning the bevel more than the spine, so we'll still get a sort of distal taper occurring, but will retain strength in the spine, yet still have a fine edge, which is the type of grind I'm trying to achieve. So what I need to do is to adjust the wraparound table from 90 degrees. When you buy one of these, it comes with a smaller version, one of these, which decodes it, but 4 degrees is, there's another, it's the bottom one here, and then I just, no, that's it. So that should be at 4 degrees, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's enough to put a taper in the blade. So I'm going to grind along here, grind along there, and I'm going to be watching the edge come down, and it's just, it's a bit hard to say how thick it wants to be, but what I'm looking for is that it's probably about half the thickness I'm trying to reduce it by, but with a taper towards the edge, because if you've got a taper in thickness, it will mean that the bevel will also be, just simple geometry means the bevel will be shorter when you get towards the tip, which is a look I'm trying to get. One thing about the Pro Edge is that some belts can bounce on it a bit, so if you look at this, it's got quite a lot of bounce, which isn't very nice to work on. One thing you can do is increase the spring pressure, and I'm just using a bungee here, and I'll turn it on, and if you watch the amount of bounce, see there's a lot less bounce with that, but because it's increased the tension, it's slightly altered the tracking, so it'll need a little bit of a tweak, which might not be easy here, but I'll just adjust the tracking to centre the belt. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to start grinding. I'll do a bit on one side, a bit on the other side.
What grit is this, by the way?
All right. 60 grit again. I tend to use 60 as the main grit for roughing on the Pro Edge, because 36 I say is overpowering, but and I put the extraction on again because we've got extraction here, and it's just good practice too. Now I'm going to come around the other side. And I'll balance it a bit more off this side. Okay. What I'll do now is I'll just go over it with a slightly finer belt, 120 grit. and over to the other side. And finally, a finer grit. This is just aesthetic, it doesn't do anything, but I think it looks nicer finished to this grit level. So that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, that's good enough. Good, other side, also. And that's the primary grind done, which has sort of set the edge geometry that I want. So we've got a nice thick spine still, so it's a fairly rigid blade, but the edge is already quite thin, so the edge bevel is going to be quite short, which is what we want for it to be able to turn in the cut. So that's what we're going to do now, is grind the edge bevel. Obviously we're not going to grind that at 4 degrees or else it'll just come in. So I'm going to adjust this now to 25 degrees, or an included angle of 25 degrees, which means 12 degrees, 12.5 degrees either side. So I'll just adjust this. And that will give me 25 degrees. So now it's just a question of grinding the bevels on, and just keep checking with grinding. You always got to keep checking, do one side a bit and then the other side, and keep coming in evenly, because otherwise you can get what you think is the right bevel length and then you haven't got enough steel left on the other side, so they're going to be unbalanced. So you can sort of correct it by coming down, but then the blade gets narrower and narrower. So I'm sure I'm going to have to Right, I'll turn extraction on. Got to adjust this a bit. I'm not happy with that. But I'll leave that in. Now I'll go to the other side. Back again. Back again. One more time. Okay, I'll turn that off. So what I was looking for is for bevels to be the same width or thickness either side, tapering nicely, and also for me to have met the edge, which means forming a burn. You can see this little white feathery, I'm sure you're picking that up, Zed, this this burr here, and you want to be able to do a pass and then do the other side and see it flip over to the other side. But yeah, so I know that I've hit edge now, so all I've got to do is refine that, and because it's held in a jig, it's very easy. All I'm doing is removing the 120 grit scratches, so I'll work down through the grits, and I'll have 2 grit sequences to work down through. I'll have the this is a Trizac belt, again a belt we sell, obviously I don't make it, but it's a yeah, it's a 3M product, very good, and these run with a lot less bounce, which is very nice. A45, the grit sequences run a different way. A45 is about 400 grit, so we're going from 120 to 400. And then the next one, which I'll probably change quicker, is A16, which is 1200. So that's the final grit. But what I tend to do, is because it can be quite hard to see that you're through the scratch pattern. Oh, that's you don't have to colour the entire bevel in, but just mark it up, because sometimes you don't go all the way to the tip. That's a better Sharpie for it. But I'll run this now, and when I've obliterated it, I'll mark it up again and do it twice. Tracking. See, there's a little bit I missed there, and I wouldn't have known otherwise.
this is the last grit.
This is the last grit, 1,200 it equates to, so it's pretty fine. Okay, I'll just do 2 passes over this. Over we go. Mark it up again. Yeah, don't mark that bit because it's hard to get the pen mark out. It's quite annoying if you spray onto that. I haven't quite got to the tip. And that's it, and see the blade is completely cool, there's no heat in it, but you do something, I've probably made it look relatively easy because I've done it a lot, and one thing that people do have difficulty with is the tip. Is that obviously because you've got a blade which is largely flat, to make the edge engage you don't need much. You don't need to lift it up too much, lifting it up the slope I mean, but to make the tip engage you've got to lift up, so you've got to move up to this angle here to make the tip engage. And what people will sometimes tend to do is, again because I've seen, with all due respect, YouTube videos, they will have seen videos where people like grind with the big flourishes, and so they'll come up and then they get to the tip and then they'll carry on past the tip and carry on round like this until it comes off the end, and so they'll grind way sharper angle than they need to, which makes the tip drop away, and then there's always a chance of cutting the belt or snapping it off. And you see that in people sharpening by hand. There's this flourish which I think has been ingrained into a lot of videos, which isn't that helpful, same as stropping. But generally if I'm doing the tip, I'll come to the tip and either lift away or come to the tip and come back and lift away, but not ever go to the tip and go past the tip. And again you've got to be careful you don't come in on a corner and you can grind a notch into the blade, so I always try and come in at the centre of the belt and stay away from the corners of the belt as much as possible, and always keep it moving when you're doing it. Now the trouble with doing all this is I've probably put scratches that way along the blade, which is not what I'm after, but it won't really matter because the next stage is sharpening. But this is now really sharp. With normally if it's a turning Sloyd blade which I'm selling, all I'll do is strop it at this stage, because 1,200 grit with a Trizact is a really crisp edge actually, and you can strop it and it's absolutely fine to sell. So I'd normally just strop, but I'll do a little bit more in the final sharpening I think. But that's it for grinding the blade. Although what I would say, what I'd like to say, this is the jig which is used for blades which has got a round tang, and that's why I'm selling blanks with a round tang, so it fits into there. And as you'll see, round tangs are great and they make sharpening, they make handling a lot easier because you just drill a round hole and put it in. But I'm very much aware that most blades are flat tang, and so I've got a jig out which will hold a flat tang blade. And these are some of this is the Sloyd blade which I make, and this is the jig for holding the Sloyd blade. You can see I won't do it up, but well actually, cause you can see that it works exactly the same. I haven't given myself enough clearance. And I'll touch on this more in another video, but you can see it's exactly the same idea. It allows you to do both bevels, and it's exactly the same process. It just works for a flat tang. How I've made this is I've actually used a plastic insert. So it's a big heavy metal body, but there's a relatively cheap plastic insert in which can be replaced if it's damaged. I was dubious about if plastic would hold up if I'd melt it, so I've actually tested these for the last 8 months now, and I've yet to melt one. So in practice it works, and the thing is, because it's plastic, it grips really well, and it's got a huge amount of flexibility, so it can go from 3.2 millimeters to, say you'd cut out a bit of you had an old handsaw or a circular saw or anything like that. You could use, a lot of people have more easy access to flat steel, so this will grip down, and this is 1.6 millimeter thick. You see it grips absolutely fine, and it will take that up, work exactly the same way. So this jig allows you to grip flat tang blades, but the grinding process is then exactly the same. You do have to be a little bit more careful about overheating it, but if you're using a blade which has already been hardened and tempered, you have to be more careful, because if you're getting it to a temperature where you're going to melt the plastic here, then you're definitely going to be getting to a temperature where you would be damaging the temper on the blade. So the plastic isn't going to be damaged. The danger or the difficulty with this is if you're aggressively grinding a blade which hasn't been hardened, then traditionally you use up your old belts on this and press really hard. Then it is perfectly possible to put enough heat into the blade, because it doesn't matter if you were to get it hot and melt that, but then it's just a question of dipping the blade every now and again to cool it off. But in practice I've roughed with these and it's been fine. So I tested these for 6 months on my production run of blades, and I've yet to melt one. So that is another option, but same idea, but we use the round tang version for this demonstration.
So there you have it, my friends. That is a wrap for this video. Nick, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ted.
It was really insightful for me to see the process from start to finish. So as we mentioned at the very beginning, this video is part of a continuing series on making a turning Sloyd knife. Now in the next installment, what we're going to be looking at is actually making, shaping a handle and also fitting the blade within that. And then in the very final video, Nick is going to be talking about some sharpening tips and techniques and maintenance kind of techniques in terms of keeping the edge as sharp as you can. So all the other videos in this entire series are linked to down below in the description. Also the various things that Nick has referenced throughout this video, for example, the jigs for both the round tang and the flat tang, and all the other kind of paraphernalia that he's mentioned will all be linked to below in the description as well. And you can source all of those from Hone if you need an outlet to kind of get those materials and components from. And lastly, what I'm going to be doing is putting a link to the Hone main website as well as the Instagram, and by following those two profiles you can kind of be kept up to date on what's going on. Especially on Instagram, you can be kept up to date with a lot of the innovation that Nick is doing with Hone. So all the other links to all the other videos in the series will be linked to down below in the description. And in the next video we're going to be looking at the handle, something I'm also very excited to see. So I shall see you on that next video, and I shall see you in the next installment of Z Outdoors. So until then, I hope whatever you're doing, you have a blessed day, a blessed week ahead. From Nick Westermann of Hone and myself, Z Outdoors, peace out.